All right, so Mitch, one thing we've talked about a lot is training.
Yeah.
Within the federal government, which within the provinces, municipally, we're seeing the implementation, introduction of all these new technologies, and not necessarily the skills within government to accommodate them. And the government is taking various strategies on how to augment the training within the public service immediately now, but also to upskill those that are joining the public service. So you're seeing some initiatives at the Canada School for Public Service,
Yeah.
around basic training, around cyber, around AI and whatnot. And today we have Jeff Musson from Coding for Veterans, who has kind of figured out the training piece, at least on the cybersecurity front. And he's going to, his training program is all about really upskilling veterans at the moment, helping veterans transition to new careers within the IT sector and other sectors. But also, this program that he's developed, which is quite unique in the world, I would say, can also be applied to different industries. And one area that Jeff has talked to me about is how the airline industry that has been so negatively affected by COVID, how the unemployed within that industry are looking at his program as a way to potentially reskill and reintroduce themselves to different industries. So Jeff has been leading the Coding for Veterans program for several years now, and great to have you on the show, Jeff. So Jeff, would love to hear a little bit about. Why don't you give ourselves a little bit of a background on yourself and
Yeah.
kind of how you got started with the program and how it's going so far.
Sounds good, guys, and I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. This podcast is really a unique venture you guys are doing, so kudos to you guys. The Coding for Veterans program really helps military veterans to retrain for jobs in Canada's tech sector, both in software development and cybersecurity. And I, along with the team, have really put together a robust program that fits the needs not only of industry, but also for the veterans to transition. I'm not sure if you're aware, but studies show that in the next 12 to 18 months, there's approximately 147,000 IT jobs that are projected to go unfilled in Canada. And so there's only one of three ways to solve the problem. You either have to really ramp up immigration. You can, change, and I'm a graduate of law school, so I can say this: graduate less lawyers and accountants and more geeks, as we'll say, right? Or, but good luck on that, because that's like trying to turn a battleship in the middle of the ocean. So, pardon the pun, but the only other way to solve this talent shortage gap is through retraining and reskilling. And so that's kind of the niche that Coding for Veterans fills. And, I'm executive director, but, Pat Shaw has been my co-pilot on this and co-founder. And it's been, we've really built out a robust team to deliver this program in partnership with the University of Ottawa.
And Jeff, so your background, you're an entrepreneur. You have your own software business. What enticed you to get involved in this, and particularly in the veteran sector, helping them transition to new, job opportunities?
Yeah, so it really kind of was a convergent of, things at the same time, which, maybe that's where the best ideas typically come from, because it's filling a need. So if I were to rewind, it's about 3 years ago. As you said, I own actually a software company, and we landed a contract, and I needed to ramp up our hiring. So I put an ad in the traditional, areas looking for people. To say I was underwhelmed with the lack of talent coming through my door was an understatement. And in that moment of frustration, I pull out the whiteboard and I say, if I were to create my ideal developer, what do they look like? You want things like attention to detail, leadership, teamwork. And then I took a step back and I'm like, holy cow, these people are in the military. And I've had family members and friends that have served in the military, but unfortunately I haven't. And so I said, is it possible to actually identify those leaving Canada's military? Because I think somewhere between 7 to 9,000, we'll say under 10,000 people every year leave Canada's military. Can we identify those that have an aptitude for or a desire for a job in the tech sector and want to retrain? And so I'm fortunate because I chair Tech Day on Parliament Hill every year, right? At least pre-COVID, right? But we're coming back. And I put together a one-page paper that basically was that thesis. Can we identify those leaving the military? And I sent it off to the Minister of Veterans Affairs. And next thing you know, get a phone call. So it was really a push from industry to fill this need. But how often, and it's very rare, I can tell you that an idea and a concept actually come to fruition that I call it ticking off a whole bunch of boxes. Not only are you providing career stability for veterans, good paying jobs, but you're also serving a need in the marketplace to start filling that skills gap.
Interesting. Yeah. I think the drive from industry and then this collaboration with government as well as the military makes it a really interesting kind of concept in terms of how you're taking military veterans and really, as you said, reskilling, redeveloping things that there may be inherently talented at from the training in the military and everything, and building off of that.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, I mean, you make it sound easy,
yeah,
but developing a cybersecurity curriculum is not easy.
No.
And
right.
I mean, just in dealing with, the government personally, trying to figure out what skills are needed within government, within the industry on cybersecurity is not it's not like a one-day thing. And it's difficult because like each department is a little bit different, and they all are all kind of starting at different levels of skills. I'm sure some of the veterans entering your program have more advanced skills than others, right? So could you tell us a little bit about the story of the process of developing that curriculum, how you based what you based it off of, how you put together, how you formulated those partnerships with the universities, and then perhaps how it's going so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. It was very difficult, but there's a reason why people are given 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? The idea is to go out and listen. And so we set up focus groups. First focus group that we set up was actually with the veterans themselves. And we said, tell us about your transition. And we got a lot of valuable information. And one of the most valuable pieces of that information was there's actually something like just about 100 occupations within the military which have a tech focus to them. So where originally this program was focused on coding and software, we determined, that there was a need for an advanced stream. And in cybersecurity is where we picked it because it really aligned with defending on the battlefield. Also, now you're defending in cyberspace. So from a cultural DNA kind of, it was a very easy kind of transition. The second thing, but it was interesting because we didn't want to go changing the name of the program because we actually thought Coding for Veterans, and it is kind of a cool name, right? And people get it. And so there's, as I said, there's 2 streams. The next listening tour we embarked on was we went and talked to employers, right? And we said to the employers, on the software side, what are the skills in demand and that you guys are seeing in your HR, or your HR needs, but what are your tech people looking for? And they gave us a list of, the various software programs that are in demand, things like Python, JavaScript, a whole host of them, Ruby on Rails. So then the next part of this equation was that when it came to the cybersecurity side, what were these companies looking to hire? And specifically, what industry accreditations? Because it's great that someone graduates from the University of Ottawa, or you have other, cyber programs out there, but quite frankly, industry and government is really interested in those certifications. And so what we did was we identified that the CISSP certification is really kind of the pinnacle as it relates to the cyber industry. And then we also introduced the CCNA certification. So now we kind of knew what the end goals were with the curriculum. And then it was a matter of building it backwards to make sure that there was very little daylight between graduates in our program and what was required in industry. And so, that's kind of part 1. And then, really part 2 is, okay, how are we going to find an academic partner in which to deliver this core curriculum? And again, we went and we talked to numerous colleges, university, private colleges. And what was interesting was that we really needed to be able to deliver this course content in a new revolutionized format. And remember, this was about a year before COVID hit. What happened with that listening tour with the veterans, it also became very abundantly clear that they're done uprooting their families and moving. So they needed the program to come to them, hence why we built the program to be delivered online. So now when we were looking for that academic partner who could deliver it online, that's how we ultimately ended up with the University of Ottawa. And then, I always like to say in life, it's better to be lucky than good. And all of a sudden, 6 months, after this program launched, COVID hit and everything moved to online. And guess what? We were already set there. And since that time, our enrollment has just started to skyrocket.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, what kind of numbers are we talking about in terms of veterans enrolling and graduating from the program at this point?
Yeah, so we really have 3 cohorts per year that we enroll in veterans. And you have to remember, this program only launched, it's going to be 2 years ago this September, so 24 months ago, and we started with 5 people. They're now just under 155 people in the program, and we're signing up, we're trending towards 100 signups per cohort. So this program is really starting to ramp up, because the other thing that it's continual iteration. And what's kind of cool is, because this concept of this program came out of the tech industry, because I had never been exposed other than going to school from the academic side, we're able to pivot very quickly to upgrade curriculum and needs of the program. So we've actually now, increased our, student body, because we have been able to secure funding to subsidize tuition for spouses, family members, reservists, those that typically couldn't qualify for our program.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I find it really interesting how you mentioned how it's pivoting depending on industry, because one of my next questions to you would be, okay, cybersecurity and the tech field and the needs of the tech field change so rapidly, and this evolving nature of the tech world as it is, how you engage with that. And I think you answered it perfectly, which is it's based on the actual industry itself, instead of being based in maybe academia, which might be a little bit behind by the time it all gets approved and everything. So you're pivoting to actually match industry. So what type of companies are getting involved in this and got involved in helping you kind of structure the program, and then are hiring some of the veterans as they come out? Are you seeing mainly defense companies, tech companies, or airlines? What's the trend right now?
Yeah, what's interesting is it's been all over the map, right? So we've got banks, right, that are key supporters of our programs. And, as we can see, financial services and those, especially with all this online banking and what have you, they really want this key constituent as part of their hiring for their talent stream. So the banks have been key. Defense companies, right? Because you also have a nice kind of synergy between, going from serving in the military to now working with defense contractors. So we've had those. Government. So the federal government has hired, through our program with shared services at the federal level. The other thing that's really been interesting too is police departments, right? So we have a number of people that have come into our program through the RCMP and other police services across Canada, because a lot of, I wouldn't say, it's an easy switch from going from the military to policing, but there's a lot of military people that leave CAF that end up going into policing. So what now has happened is these police departments are looking at that talent and repositioning it through our program to then start fighting cybercrime.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, you talked a lot about reskilling, retraining, right? We're talking about veterans transitioning into new industries, airline, unemployed airline people going into tech, through your program. Do you see your program possibly being implemented at like the elementary or secondary level of education, wherein you're not really focusing on retraining, but instead you're getting a new workforce ready to get into the modern context, right, into
Yeah.
the modern industries. Do you see this app be potentially applied in the education system within the provinces?
Yes and no. One thing that I've learned in business over the years is kind of know where your niche is and go deep on it, right? And our niche is retraining and reskilling, and as opposed to training someone for the first time. Now, we support a lot of organizations that do that because there's only one set of curriculum, right? Like you can only, properly learn Python one way or Java or what have you. So we all work together. But in terms of our core constituent, it's sort of that retraining. And the other thing that we've done with our program is that before anyone enrolls in our program, we actually run them through a 45-minute online assessment to make sure that they have the soft skills that are required to succeed in the tech industry. And so that doesn't, like when you're younger, you just haven't exposed yourself to various facets out there, right? And so, that's, one thing. And then really last thing, in terms of our core curriculum, we've introduced what's called an organizational behavior course. And what this OB course does is it actually looks at the cultural aspects in the tech industry and compares them to the cultural aspects in the military. And I always have jokingly tell people, disruption and thinking out of the box is encouraged in the tech industry. You do that in the military, they'll kick you out, right? Mm-hmm. So, we really sort of look at the mature student, for lack of a better word, is kind of where we're focused.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm a tech company, I'm a government that might not necessarily be familiar with your program, like what's the easiest way for them to get involved, either by putting forth some of their employees for retraining or hiring, folks coming out of the training? What's the best way for them to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, for starters, our website has a tremendous amount of information. Go to www.codingforveterans.com. Not only when individuals go to look to apply, but also companies that look to hire. And what was great was, I always say necessity is the mother of all invention. And, COVID hit and we really, would typically do our recruiting into the program by attending various job fairs, or they're actually called SCAN seminars on a military bases. When COVID hit, those got shut down. So last October into November, we actually launched the Coding for Veterans Career Caravan across Ontario. And we partnered in with the Canadian Legions because we needed asphalt everywhere across the province. And we customized the tent, we customized the van, and we took our message on the road. Well, I can tell you, like my family was sick of seeing me getting interviewed on TV and on the radio. I think it was like 16 times, and they're like, enough already. But what that did was it allowed, I think we were ultimately covered by 55 media outlets across Canada, translated into 13 million media impressions. And the best stat of all, 256 people applied to the program, right? So it helped to get word out. And so we actually had a tremendous amount of employers that reached out to us because they saw us on that. And so, we're going to end up doing that again, but on a national scale, coming up later on this fall. So I imagine take what we've learned through the Ontario, career caravan, and now from coast to coast, we should be able to replicate that.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we were going to pull up that program because, we all saw it on TV and it was great to see that, especially this engagement between you guys and the Veterans Association, as well as the Legions and everything like that. What other areas do you see this retraining, retooling being beneficial? Have you guys thought about expanding the program past the tech sector? And is there any areas where you think it's needed?
Yeah. So what's interesting is tech, again, is kind of in our DNA, right? So this is where we see that. And there's a lot of other organizations out there, like you've got Helmets to Hard Hats, which helps military veterans get into construction jobs. You got Princess Trust helping military veterans get into entrepreneurship. With us, we're just sort of focused on that area. But what I see happening is, and Kevin alluded to it a little bit earlier, is that there are industries out there that are ripe for retraining. And what's been interesting is, again, COVID's dealt a serious blow to a lot of industries, the one of them being the airline industry. And so can we take this model of what we've done here and repurpose it for those that have been furloughed and laid off and what have you? And what we found is that the airline industry, their IT departments are very interested in hiring our graduates to come back into their companies, because how rare is it that you actually now have a technically trained individual who understands the airline industry, right? Normally you'll have people graduating that, they don't understand the culture, the nomenclature, everything, right? And so now they can have a robust IT department. So that's where we really see some areas. And, could be oil workers out in Alberta, right? Could be whatever the case is. Those industries that have been, really hard hit, this is a perfect avenue for them.
Yeah, the oil sector piece, that is very interesting. I think that would be incredibly useful right now, as that province, kind of turns away from that industry, I would say almost for good, for better or for worse. But that makes a lot of sense for that application. I mean, at the end of the day, what could be better than hiring a former military member who's now trained up on IT, right? I mean, it makes just perfect sense. So Jeff, thank you for joining the Canadian GovTech Summit podcast today. Appreciate you being here. Look forward to having you again and getting an update on the initiative. But for now, we look forward to hearing about the next roadshow. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, guys. Appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to reconnecting down the road.
For sure.
Thank you.